Hi, everyone. Welcome in. Thanks so much for spending a little time with us, choosing to spend a little time with us.
Hello,
Good
hello.
morning. Good morning or afternoon, wherever you're
Evening,
tuning
depending
in
on your time
from.
zone.
As people filter into today's webinar, I am your housekeeping girl. So I'm going to get started with that. Again, thank you all very much for coming to today's webinar, celebrating the 10-4 rule, the first step to meaningful connection. My name is Katie Alexander, for people who don't know me. I'm the community builder here at ZingTrain, and I will be the host of your webinar today. And today I'm here with Jenny Yim. She's one of our trainers. And then we also have another staff member, Mara Ferguson, who's our keynote liaison. She is behind the scenes, and she'll be in the chat and monitoring any questions that you have with me. We are all coming to you live from Ann Arbor, Michigan at ZingTrain. And we always love to know where other people are tuning in from. So if you want to drop your location in the chat, you can find it at the bottom of your screen. It's really fun. And then you might also catch wind of a neighbor or two. Okay, so here are the three helpful tips for today. One is how the webinar is going to be structured. So Jenny is going to be presenting for a bit first, and then we leave time at the end for Q&A. And while she is talking, we encourage you to submit your questions in the moment into the Q&A feature of Zoom, which is at the bottom of the screen. And we will do our best to answer as many as we can. But if we're not able to, based on the amount of time, we will include any resources about them in the follow-up email. The second is that there is closed captioning, which is also another button at the bottom of the Zoom screen. And Mara will drop details in the chat if you would like to turn that on. And then lastly, we are recording this conversation and we will be sending out the recording and the slides that Jenny shares by the end of tomorrow in a follow-up email that I mentioned. And then this will also live as a resource on our website alongside lots of other previous webinars and articles that we have written. So that's everything I've got. And I will be back for the Q&A and I'll turn it over to Jenny to get us started.
Thank you so much, Katie and Mara, for getting me set up. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I'm very excited to see the whole waterfall of locations. It's very exciting to see. And we're here today to talk about the 10-4 rule, which is a commonly used tool throughout our organization here in the Zingerman's community of businesses. And we realized a number of years ago that October 4th is 10/4. And I, here in this webinar, you watching here now, I will claim it as having that idea because I distinctly remember Katie and Mara being in a huddle meeting and asking about if we're doing anything on October 4th and then people saying, yeah, let's start recognizing it. So this is it. And it could happen any time of year. This is just a moment to pause and recognize the power of connection and how a small action can have a meaningful impact. And so I'm here to reshare the talk about 10/4, or if you are new to it, that's great. I hope we can have quite a bit of conversation today. And so you're talking about the 10/4 rule being the first step to meaningful connection. And what this is a part of is our 3 steps to giving great service, which is the service recipe that we use here at Zingerman's. And by recipe, I mean a set of steps to follow to achieve consistent results. And we have 10 different businesses in our organization. We're quite a diverse group. We're kind of like cousins. We're all related, but we're kind of all doing our own thing. We all practice the same service steps. The what we do is consistent as much as possible, we'd like. And then the how we do it, that is what really varies. And that's what I invite you today in this webinar to consider, celebrate, notice the ways that you have been uniquely and creatively created ways to connect with others. And then share that around and so forth. So what is the 10/4 rule? So for any of you who've not been yet to ZingTrain for a 2-day service seminar or a virtual workshop or private training online or us traveling to you, the 10-4 rule is one of our very core SOPs or standard operating procedures. And what it means is that when someone is about 10 feet away, we make eye contact and smile. And then when you're about 4 feet away, verbally greet. And that is it. That is how we greet people in an organization. It's an acknowledgement. The photo or illustration you see on the bottom right of the slide, that is taken from a flyer, a poster that we use around the organization to help remind us of this concept. And what it meant for me coming in years ago as a part-time seasonal staff member, not really sure what service is or is supposed to be like, not being sure if I could fulfill service standards expected by a job at Zingerman's. It was such a relief that instead of being told, hey, greet people, which can look a lot of different ways because we're a lot of different people, I was taught the 10-4 rule. When someone's 10 feet away, make eye contact and smile. When someone's 4 feet away, verbally greet. That verbal greeting can vary, the eye contact and smile can vary in how it's executed, but the what is consistent, and that is how we communicate in our organization. And it's really wonderful that it is so indeed consistent, meaning that we do this with external customers and internal customers, meaning our coworkers, other, staff members, people who report to us, people we report to. We make an effort to do 10-4 the first time we see each other in a shift or a day. And it really does help the sense of belonging in an organization from my perspective. So yeah, when I've taught 10-4 around, because we as ZingTrain trainers, we travel over the United States, internationally, and we do a lot of work online as well. And sometimes people ask, like, what is the point of 10-4? Because we can sometimes get really caught up in that 10 feet versus 4 feet. And that is adaptable. You can change it to any distance, any context. And sometimes we're thousands of miles away, so we can really reframe and think about what is our 10-4 acknowledgement of greet, what form of greeting when we're working virtually, when we have a remote team, when we're traveling, anything. I really encourage you to bring your creativity to this or share practices that you're already using that really hit this bottom line of acknowledgement. And I put in parentheses in a good positive way because I realize that is key as well. We can acknowledge, and sometimes I think of, my teenage kids and I acknowledge them, but in a way that's like, I'm looking at you, like, watch out, but here it's acknowledgement of, hey, welcome. It does not have to be interruptive or intrusive. It can be very casual. It could be more formal, again, depending on your environment. And for us, for me, it really comes to be about belonging. Do we acknowledge, like, do you belong here? And to reference that, I'll use Zingerman's definition of belonging because we have definitions we use within our organization that may not be the same as dictionary definitions around. We think of belonging as the feeling of being yourself and being valued for it. So, from the first interaction and throughout any interaction, we want to think about how can we acknowledge someone in a way that brings a sense of belonging. And with that, thinking about belonging, sometimes it can be challenging to really think, well, gosh, what is belonging and how do we create a sense of belonging? I was reminded by our head of human resources, our Department for People, Rita Nix. She teaches a wonderful workshop on inclusive leadership. I encourage you to check it out because she said, yes, belonging is important, but sometimes it's hard to imagine. And we can often think of times when we have felt like we did not belong. So if that is more accessible, we can think of that. Because I certainly can think of more than one time when I've walked into, say, a restaurant or a store and felt really underdressed all of a sudden, or like wondering, whoa, should I be here? Am I in the wrong place? I'm not sure. Or being greeted with, we close in 5 minutes, and then thinking, oh, okay, maybe I should just go then. Okay. So there are different ways to acknowledge people, and ideally, even if it's in a good, positive way, that can help set a tone that can lead to a sense of belonging and acknowledgement in a good way, and that's what we hope for. And so I've, was thinking about this because for us here at Zingerman's, fall does have a number of holidays. We had Chuseok, Korean Thanksgiving, the high holidays, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, lots of time to reflect and think. And I was thinking with 10-4 and reflecting, gosh, the beautiful ways that so many of my coworkers around our organization practice 10-4. There really is such a range of diversity in how we execute it. And sometimes I don't notice because the feeling that I get when I receive all these different 10-4s is pretty consistent, which is just basic acknowledgement. Hi, you exist. It has helped me immensely in asking other people for help. I have a very hard time asking for help, but when coworkers have already acknowledged me, greeted me, even if it's very brief, it's so much easier for me to be able to say, hey, the dumpster's on fire. What can I do? Instead of me trying to get their attention and let them know that I exist in the universe and then moving on from there. So it's really, again, could be a small action with a meaningful impact. And I really appreciate that here at Zingerman's, we have lots of conversations about how are we practicing, defining it, and really encouraging kind of a culture. So sharing with others. So I asked friends for examples and, where is the 10-4 used? Pretty much everywhere, anytime we have interaction. So in person, we think about physical spaces. And sometimes, even when people are not humans or not in the space, we can think about ways that help people feel acknowledged or that they might belong in the space before a person, human can get there. Um, People reminded me it's 360 degrees all around, not just forward, but it's really nice when you're at a station that's surrounded by people that you can be aware. Works through glass, which I appreciate. Remotely, we do it through email, through phone. Through phone, it's ideally answering the phone and acknowledgement, but smiling as you answer the phone, or if you're calling someone else, smile as you dial. And you can have reminders. So the service center at mail order for Zingerman's used to have little mirrors at every monitor, just as a reminder, not because everyone was vain and checking their bangs all the time, but really just as a reminder of let's smile. And for me, it was also a reminder that I believe you can hear eye rolls over the phone. I've tested it and I think it's been pretty consistent. So it's just there. And, for email, it's greetings and sign-offs and kind of making sure that you have a complete experience. Um, and then again, if we're not sure what at 10-4 by email would look like, we can start to think about what would be not desirable for an acknowledgement or feeling of belonging in email. So and then from there, maybe build on what we can share to give more of a sense of belonging. Because it could look like greetings, but it could look like just the way you write your emails. It really depends on the group. The beautiful thing is that you can talk about it and come to a group understanding to share for your organizational culture. With that, we try and practice 10-4 through video calls as well, whether that's you can wave as people are joining and their audio is connecting. Maybe you're going to be the first to drop something into a chat so that it's less awkward for other people to start typing into that blank chat. There's a number of things. It could be even in your Zoom waiting room, if you have a waiting room, that you could, personalize the message to let the people know that you're waiting for them, you'll be with them in a moment, something that lets them know they're in the right place. And even on chats where you don't see people and you're just typing, or maybe using emojis, whether it's a direct message or a group chat, we can also think about 10-4 and how that can translate. Physical space examples, I did a little talking with friends around our organization and then realized, wow, our warehouse shop, if you're ever at 720 Phoenix Drive in Ann Arbor, Michigan, there is a warehouse shop that is self-serve, small and beautiful. I kind of love it. And it's open 7 days a week, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And it's self-serve. So there's a lot of signage to help direct people there. And they put up lovely decorations that I think are quite inviting. And then I realized, wow, even doors where, that are not actually doors have a version of 10-4. For example, part of our candy manufacturing space at Zingerman's is not an entrance door. So they've put up signage with an arrow and said, hey, you want the candy sorts in the cafe 16 steps this way. They're so specific. My kids have tested if it's exactly 16 steps, and they said, you know what, it's close enough. Like very, belonging in that way, acknowledging that you might be looking for us. Other examples could be, again, if you have a few staff and a lot of customers, it could be even like the Zingerman's Bake Shop on the south side of Ann Arbor. There's an arrow, big arrow, which I appreciate because I often miss signs to let you know if there's a line, please start here so that you're not left wondering and worrying, maybe I'm in the way. You know what to do. And then even this image here was taken when I was waiting for an appointment at our local hospital. And it let us know that if we've been waiting more than 15 minutes, we can go up to the front desk. And I just appreciated knowing that, as well as the Alice in Wonderland image, it being a children's hospital. It was really nice to have some kind of communication in a way that was nice looking, didn't make me feel like I was a bother, and was helpful in terms of guiding me even when staff were quite busy. Other examples could be things like door signs or desk decorations. Again, this, in the middle, moms make life beautiful and like a planter with like the plants being the hair. I kind of love that because that's from the hospital. When I was going, I was a little stressed out from the parking situation, so I was actually already flustered by the time I checked in. And these little dust decorations made me feel better, and I imagine that they were selected by the staff person who works there, and they're an energy boost for that staff person as well. You can also make declarations or communicate messages out. Here's one where everyone is welcome here, which is a sign I took from the internet, of which I've seen in businesses around our community in Ann Arbor area of Michigan. And you can also let people know. So, for example, if your business is a part of Recovery's Good Business, which is local to us, but it means that we welcome and staff members who are in recovery and will support them in recovery in terms of the workplace. And then some of our businesses proudly display that on the door so people know, because not only people who are in recovery, but their family members, people who support them, sometimes make an effort to support businesses that are part of this Recovery is Good Business collective, or just like knowing that from the get-go and may feel more welcome and more likely to go in or more likely to feel comfortable to stay in. And then even when people are not allowed in this case, dogs, not sure how many of you have dog conversations about what dogs can come in or not and so forth. We try and practice the power of language. This heart with the "We Love Dogs" sign is from our coffee manufacturing cafe sign door. And it says, the FDA only allows service dogs inside. So sorry. We love the dogs. So we want to focus on our power of language, focus on the positive, and be clear about expectations because we're not supposed to have any dogs inside that are not certified service dogs. Thank you for your understanding, and we're happy to bring water outside. We have dog bowls and water available and so forth. So some kind of alternative. And then on the far right, even our service center at Zingerman's Mail Order, where I was visiting, I realized there's this big hippo bowl, but they put pronoun buttons on the inside at the shift lead desk. And when you walk up to the shift lead desk, which can sometimes be a little intimidating depending on if you're a new staff member and not sure, asking someone, and usually they are doing something, they're always doing something, so you're going to be interrupted in some way. They have decorations as well as things to offer, may it be pronoun buttons or candies and so forth to people. So you can think about, the people in your life who keep those candy bowls on the desks, and, sometimes that's a way to welcome, even if we're not using words at the time. So this is all part of our cultures, kind of a culture of great service. We want to teach it, define it, live it, measure it, and reward it. If you do any of our Art of Giving Great Service training, you will see this because when people ask us, wow, what is the secret ingredient for your customer service approach? It is not a secret sauce. It is not one ingredient. It is the full Reuben sandwich with all the fixins. And we recognize that within this culture, we sometimes can narrow down and check in, how are we doing? How can we adapt? the world is changing. Are we changing with it? Do we need to change anything? If that. And so we may look at just one section of that culture sandwich. And so for us, our 10-4 rule lies within our define layer. And then we can, in that, take even further looks and actually just ask people how they are doing it. And with me asking staff recently about their versions of 10-4, it's so interesting because when I teach 10-4, say in our customer service class, I'll say at 10 feet, smile, eye contact, 4 feet, verbally greet. Every coworker I asked about this recently said, gosh, it really depends. And I said, what does it depend on? They said, well, it depends on what the other person is doing. I don't want to interrupt them if they're busy, then I just maybe give a head nod or a little wave. But if they're looking like they're lost, I'm going to engage more. If they're looking, like there's a lot that happens in a short amount of time to adapt to a 10-4, which could seem very simple. It's just a greeting. But it's really remarkable how much my coworkers think about their practice of it in order to adapt, to connect with others in a meaningful way. And as we move into, through the fall, we're leading into a winter holiday season, as we call it, meaning that there's going to be a lot of sales and happening, especially for mail order business, that well over half of their revenue happens in 2 months of the year, November and December. And they're going to be hiring well over 500 people to come in with the year-round staff of 100, and everyone has their 10-4 ready. It is one of the things I greatly appreciate about an environment with seasonal staff where people could be very part-time, maybe they're just for a few weeks, really taking advantage of every moment, including the beginning, and saying, hello, you belong here. We want you to belong here. Even during the interview, making sure that the 10-4 happens so that people can start to know that they feel welcome. It can go a long way in feeling a sense of connection when things are very busy during a busy season and staff who are there just for a few weeks. I've appreciated when they've thought of that time fondly as opposed to alternatives that could be less positive. And I'll also share that with myself. I've heard from a friend of our organization, friend of ZingTrain, Adrian Fudge with 40 Dreams has been really wonderful and shared how meaningful the 10-4 practice has been. And again, it doesn't always have to be those exact measurements, but that bottom line result of feeling a sense of connection through writing with Ari Weinswag, our co-founder, they did an article last year. It reminded me of times when I have felt throughout my life that I didn't belong, times when I was not acknowledged, or maybe was acknowledged, but not in a positive way. And then going through life, as a racial minority in my area, having a lot of thoughts on the inside and then emotions connected with that of should I be here? Should I dress differently? Should I stand differently? And then coming to Zingerman's, working here and realizing that all my coworkers consistently acknowledged me, again, not in a huge way. It was very comforting and it just felt normal, which was awesome. It was later I learned it's a job expectation of everyone that we all do 10-4. But you know what? I'm okay with that. It was nice to feel like not super special, but just special in my own way. And so I'd like to thank my coworkers and the whole community for this. And again, encourage you to think about within your culture of your organization, ways that you are already practicing a version of 10-4, some kind of acknowledgement, and ways that it can be adapted. So I feel like I've talked enough because I'm so curious what questions you may have or tips to share. I'm going to take my slides down because I could talk about different versions of 10-4 for days. Absolutely. Katie.
Hello. Thank you very much for sharing with us. Um, yeah, it's such a small thing and it can make such a huge impact in how people feel when they enter a
Mhm.
place, um, in
Yes.
person, virtually. Yeah.
Mm.
Hopefully we did a good job of 10-4ing you this morning or this afternoon when you came into the webinar. So I do have a couple questions here for you, and if anyone has anything to add, please let us know. Oh, here is one. Why is it called 10-4? Could you?
Yeah. Is they developed it thinking about 10 feet away, make eye contact and smile. At 4 feet away, verbally greet. And it fit well with the saying, 10-4, buddy. I acknowledge you. And with that, it's funny because it's rarely actually practiced with those exact measurements. Also, I've had to convert it to meters, and it doesn't sound as neat in meters, but I've been in other areas. It really is deciding a measurement, a point to make eye contact and smile. And again, it doesn't have to be a huge smile, it could just be a little hey or a head nod. And then a point where you get close enough, you would verbally greet a person. For a healthcare system, University of Michigan healthcare system, they have really long hallways. So their version of 10-4 is 30-10. When you're about 30 feet away, eye contact, smile, about 10 feet away. For people who have very busy businesses with a lot of people density, you might have a 1-2 or a 2-4, kind of concept where it's you want to acknowledge people within your orbit. And for our staff, we want to make sure that they're not overwhelmed. So if it's a really crowded area, we're going to close that 2-4 so that you have a manageable number of people in your orbit that you're giving attention to. It's really nice when people are in line, so you can acknowledge people who are coming in line and not being served yet, but that little head nod, hey, see you soon. Yep. And it could be 10-5, 10-4. It's any particular measurement. The 10-4 is what we use here at Zingerman's. That's the language we use. And again, yes. And in your kitchen, I gotta say, it is so lovely to have in kitchens, in warehouse operations. I've had staff during training say, well, I don't need to do this because I'm not working, I'm not front facing with external customers. And we're like, actually, all of your coworkers are customers. And acknowledgement goes a long way, again, in like asking for help, communicating with each other. Also, safety. I run into far fewer things now that I'm actually looking up. It's really lovely in that regard, knowing and noticing, practicing. It helps you notice when coworkers could use a hand. And yes, the slides will be available, I believe. Is that right, Katie?
Yes, yeah.
Mhm.
We'll share them
And
out, Tanya.
yeah. And we have a ton more training. Yep. And yes, we were referring it to 10-6 when we were staying no more than 6 feet away minimum. Um, yeah. And you don't want to get into the middle of their conversation. And so again, I thought it was so lovely when I asked my coworkers, how do you 10-4? And no one had one definition. They all said, it kind of depends, including if they're in a conversation, I'm not going to like stand here and try and get your attention until you stop talking to acknowledge me. This is really about the other people. Yeah. And so maybe the examples of the door communication shared was on non-human connection, but during human connection, the 10-4 rule can be used. Yes, I think, Katie. I think that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
um I think this is referring to the signage that is
Mhm.
on doors, the
Yeah.
examples that you shared
Mhm.
of yeah. And so yeah, the 10-4 rule is very adaptable. So I think the you know, at its core, it is, yes, a human to human connection. And we can think about how we create a sense of belonging and welcoming in unique ways that are still in the spirit of 10-4
Mhm.
through some of those other examples.
Yeah. Because
Yeah, it's a good
absolutely.
distinction.
Because I can look at people, but then I just wanted to acknowledge that sometimes staff, before they get the opportunity to make that human connection, what are things we could, there are all these great examples that our businesses have done to put up signage or decorations to have a sense of welcoming or coming in. Um, And then even, coming onto a shift, say, I've appreciated when it became an expectation when I was working remotely that I just check in through the group chat with the shift lead, which I didn't think was needed until I actually needed something. But setting that tone for the group of saying, and for us, we use the language of 10-4. Hey, let's 10-4 everyone on this hybrid shift in the same group chat, whether you're, because the in-person people were 10-4ing each other and saying hi. Let's create a way for that people who are working remotely to do that as well. And then it may look different. It might involve like a cat meme or some emojis. Um, but yes. All
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I would
Okay.
love to hear questions from.
Yep, we have a couple questions that have come in through the Q&A. So one is, I'm opening a new bookshop and will be hiring staff in a few months. Congratulations, by the way. Bookish people are generally introverts, and as we know, some people just generally avoid or are incapable of eye contact or verbal responses. How can I encourage my staff to stay positive when they aren't always receiving positive responses back?
Oh, yes. And it can be challenging because when you give someone a 10-4, not everyone will 10-4 you back. It is something that we learned over time. We can let staff know that the goal or what is the bottom line, we always can discuss what's kind of the bottom line, is to let the person coming into the store know that we've seen them, we've acknowledged them. Sometimes it's a group of teenagers and they will not care. And at least we've let them know that we're available, we're there, there's someone in the space. Same with libraries, any spaces. All right. And sorry. And then, yeah.
Yeah. Um, Jerome has another question. How do you reinforce this behavior within the organization?
How do you reinforce the behavior within the organization?
Hmm.
I think connected to the bookstore is finding a way where it feels natural, which a lot of times it doesn't. I mean, I remember working with people who had been young people who had been doing virtual school with their cameras off for like a year and a half, and then suddenly they're whoop, back in person, and then saying, let's practice, let's just practice. And so um, I can share that I'm very introverted. Actually, I'm like on the introvert scale over 90. Introvert means a lot of different things. I still like human connection. I just like alone time as well. I like decompression time. Um, and we have had a number of conversations about neurodiversity. And I happen to have a child who was not comfortable making direct eye contact. So when we say 10-4, it's not eye contact, stare the person down until they stare at you back. It could be a very brief acknowledgement. And actually, a bank teller at my local bank was wonderful with my child. I remember that's one of the few places I would bring them in public, and then realized she had a modified, very subtle 10-4. And that's when I learned she also had a child on the autism spectrum. One of the things that's really wonderful is if you do designate some kind of measurement, you can teach that to your staff and you can talk about it. So maybe it's not the distance in feet, maybe it's when they come through the front door or when you hear a chime or when you feel the air pressure change when the outside door opens. Like give them some kind of indication of when looking up. And yes, a lot of staff are afraid to make eye contact because the consequences a customer may talk to you. Yeah. Yeah. Like, it's a thing. And so that
Hmm.
also I encourage practice, whether it's role play, which feels really weird and silly, and the more we can do it with each other, the less we're practicing on customers. And again, not expecting a 10-4 back from others, especially external customers. And it's really not meant to be interruptive. Kind of the bottom line is just acknowledgement, like, hey. And I've, coached people who've said, like, wow, I'm really struggling with my 10-4. I'm really trying to have a friendly conversation with every person. And we're like, whoa, 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 whoa. Acknowledge it doesn't have to be the same for every person. Can really vary on context, can depend on what you're needing to do also. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that I think about is when one, it's very easy to get in the habit of doing it when you are seeing people at work every day. Like you can practice it
Mhm.
many, many, many times. And so it can feel natural quickly. Um, but I think, Jenny, I'm curious, like, I think sometimes people can get, I don't know, too comfortable with it, or it just becomes something that slides away from being top of mind. Do you have any tips for ways to sort of like bring it back to life if that happens?
Yes, yes, yeah. Because over time, we get used to each other. And that every once in a while, we might revisit our culture sandwich metaphor or just say, hey, like, where and when are we practicing 10-4? And again, it doesn't have to be huge. It can just be a little like, hey, Katie, when I walk in, this acknowledgement, and then realizing, wow, maybe I haven't been doing that with people in my building for the past 5 years, but I see them all the time. And it can just be a reminder of that little, extra lift. Just again, doesn't have to be a huge smile over the top. It can be adapted to however works for your team. And I appreciate when the team conversations happen. Um, if there's remote work happening, if there are ideas, because I know when I was in an in-person work environment and then we switched and became hybrid, and I sometimes work remotely, it was very different. I had young coworkers teach me how to use GIFs because they said, this is how we communicate. Moving images, memes, having a group chat for work. It's possible to have a group chat just for questions if you have any staff members who are nervous about asking questions. And you can have a fun group chat that's just for fun or random fun information. We had one, it still exists. It's just cats, and there's one about cheese. So having that balance of some social as well. There's cultural variations. I think Ari wrote about that last year. Like, yes, I was brought up in a culture where it's impolite to make eye contact. You're not supposed to make direct eye contact and stare down elders. People adapt it very much. It's any kind of agreed upon acknowledgement. If you want to quote Detroit, I've worked with clients who've, said, "What up, doe?" If you want to share some 313 love, that can be a 10-4. The goal is to have it an agreed upon within your group, your team, or your organization to say, hey, if we're going to be using, like, do we want to use emojis during a business meeting in the chat? Yes or no? Because knowing that ahead of time or knowing that after you've been doing it a while that it's not preferred is really helpful for people.
Yeah. In your answer, you touched on some examples of how you can bring the 10-4 into remote work. And that was a specific question that we had. And also thinking about being in a remote work environment where you're off camera.
Mhm.
You've definitely hit on some things, but I wondered if there was anything more that you wanted to add to that piece.
Mhm. I mean, people can also adapt, like if they're off camera, if they have a picture in place, if it could be them, or it could be a cute mushroom image or something that represents their personality, but something that might help others feel a little more connected as opposed to just the dark screen. Um, you can also with 10-4, sometimes I thinking about what we're saying before we greet people. And so that kind of leads to skunking, which is what we term just talking badly about others in an organization. We try not to be talking badly about others. Um, and then like, oh, my Zoom call just started and people heard. So we try and make sure, how do I say this? Sometimes being used to video calls means that you're looking around, and then when you are on video, it may be different. Mm, I would say also engaging in chat or sometimes offline games, quote games, or sometimes when I was shift leading and some people were in person and some people were remote, we would run like through the group chat a product quiz or some kind of fun activity that was low stakes, try and keep energy up. Ideally, also learning things related to the job or clarifying recent updates. Also, I think remotely, sometimes having pronunciation for people's names is helpful because we're not hearing them said out loud a lot. So if we're not sure, when we see it, we can include some kind of pronunciation or a link to an audio pronunciation. Um, and I think asking staff ways that they like to engage or would like to engage, or throwing out options to them. And if they really don't like things, then you know. No to quizzes or no to group chats or whatever it is. And again, I think just checking in at the beginning of a shift is really helpful to get that connection going, even if it doesn't have to be on video, can be just a chat. Also, sometimes we would do that as an excuse to test equipment if we're working remotely, or even if we're in different buildings, but we have walkie-talkies, we use it as equipment check. But then it's a nice thing of like, hey, I'm taking over. I'm the one on shift now. Nice to hear from you. And then it's all set up. It could
And
even
then you
be,
can really use 10-4.
yeah,
10-4.
literally, literally. Yes.
Yeah. Something that I thought of also with like when you were talking about like sort of how people enter virtual space. I think it's a lot easier to be distracted when you are remote versus when you're in a room with people. I think this maybe was something that you were alluding to, and just thinking about like the um the level of like engagement and presence that you bring
Mhm.
to a remote space,
Mhm.
or just making sure to acknowledge the individual people who are in the same space as you as
Mhm.
their own like unique entity, I think can go a long way also.
Yes. And so
So
it may
I
sound silly. Mm.
sorry. I was going to say, if anyone has any other questions, I don't have anything else that I'm seeing,
Mhm.
but I wanted to just let people know that if there is another question out there, we definitely have time for one more.
And I've often seen leaders when they come into a room with staff who report to them, say hello or acknowledge, head nod or something to each individual. And we can think about if we're working remotely, how is there a way, especially for a leader, to acknowledge somehow, do that version of walking into a room and acknowledging everyone, whether it's a direct message to each person, checking in. The more regularly we do it, the less awkward it can seem. Because if I haven't received a message from someone in a long time and I suddenly do, then I'm like, what's going on? What's wrong? So kind of normalizing that. And you can even think about if you're out of office replies, that kind of thing. If you have a shared inbox of any kind or a customer service line, you can even have an auto reply as a version of a 10-4 to say, hey, we've received your email. And then maybe an expected reply time by, an alternative way to contact, maybe a phone number. But yeah, just thinking of all the times I sent an email and not sure where it went or if it actually sent.
Um, do you have any other closing remarks, Jenny?
That anything that can help you, like, um, I encourage again for you all to be creative and think about what is your bottom line in a greeting, you know, whether it's the way a website looks, if because that's the first thing someone sees online, or whether what people see if they come to your physical space, or when you start a remote shift, which is let's get creative, people. I'd love to hear your ideas later, what you end up practicing. Um, and then once you have a sense of that, really sharing it as a group norm, so that people are aware that it's agreed upon and practiced. So again, for us, for Zingerman's, that's our 10-4 language. But it really implies to that bottom line of how can we acknowledge because of all of the important things that are linked to that. And if you need cheat sheets, it even pains me to say that, please do it, whether it's a picture, a flyer, a set of steps, something to look at, example phrases next to a phone. Email templates are great to start with. You can always update and personalize templates, but let's help people out. It pains me to call them cheat sheets because I don't think it's cheating if it's a tool that helps you do your job effectively. So please give yourself those gifts. And also you can really acknowledge that if you're working with a team, that not everyone has to be the same. I hear lots of wonderful greetings with really different tones of voice, different body language. I see a lot of our staff writing emails that are quite different, yet have kind of a bottom line impact of engagement. And so I
Yeah.
think that that really depends on you all because you're all over the place. And so figure out what works for your area, your team, and then it's really lovely to see what can come out. And you can check in with folks. How's it going with that greeting?
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think Crystal, just to your point, or to your question, I think Jenny was sort of, you were writing it and Jenny was sort of talking to it. It's the 10-4 rule is really, it's still meant to be able to show your personality and you are meant able to express it in a way that feels natural for you while also being considerate to the situation of the person that you're
Absolutely, yes.
greeting.
We've had
So
partners we've worked with doing service implementation who've adapted it. Churchill's Market says, if you see him in the aisle, give him a smile. And then they say, add a wave, unless you're holding something and it compromises safety. Uh,
very funny. Well,
yeah.
I'm sorry to,
Practice, practice,
it's
practice.
yeah. It's
Oh,
we're just over time, so I wanted to just say thank you to everyone and yeah, respect everyone's time here. Jenny, thank you very much for sharing so much and such a like a broad picture of what this rule can be and how it really
mhm.
makes people feel and how it really can make a big difference for somebody. So if you have a little time. We have a quick poll. We love to hear what people thought of the conversation. So there is a poll that Mara will pop up. It's 0 to 10. 10 is you would recommend this in a heartbeat. 0 is this was the worst thing I've ever watched. And then also, if you have a little more time and would like to give us some feedback on like some words feedback and also any suggestions for future webinars. We will have a link in the chat for that too. And then I will send out the recording and these slides by the end of tomorrow. And then you will hear from us again soon with a future free webinar. So thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Mara. And we'll see you all again, hopefully.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.